So my name's Greg Leffel. I am the Executive Director and founder of the Virginia Blockchain Council. I'm also on the steering committee of the USBC, or the US Blockchain Coalition, which is a strategic initiative of the GBBC. And I also chair our northeastern states for the USBC. So today we're going to talk about a couple different things. We're going to give you a quick highlight of the USBC, or the US Blockchain Coalition. And then we're also going to just briefly touch or give you a high-level overview of the UCC and the Article 12 amendments from 2022 that are currently going through our state legislatures as we speak. Excited to say that Virginia has it on the governor's desk for this session, so we're certainly excited about that. I want to give a shout out to Sandra and the GBBC crew. Thank you so much for having us today and giving us an opportunity to speak. It's not easy to put this stuff together, so the work is definitely recognized, and we appreciate your leadership. So now, what is the USBC? The US Blockchain Coalition is the convener, proactive coordinator, and strategic unifier across the states and the country. The USBC is a clearinghouse for all states, 46, including District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. So just kind of think of all the states collectively getting together, and we're joining together for a couple different purposes. For Virginia's perspective, we did it because we wanted to do best practices. We wanted to get some mentorship and leadership from other states that are leading the way. We drive and conduct policy analysis, development, and advocacy, serve as expert witnesses to legislative and judicial bodies, lead and participate in promoting the adoption of smart, intelligent policies, applications, and systems, and then serve as the information, insight, and I like this one, the analytics bureau for emerging technologies like blockchain to provide strategy, policy guidance, and model legislation across the country. And then the why. It's easy to kind of do this on your own from a state perspective, but it's much better to go with a group of folks. And as we coordinate and strategize, what we've found over the last few years, it certainly has paid its dividends for us because we've been able to take those best practices state by state and implement those as we go. So we break down silos, we reduce friction, consolidate political influence and power, increase collective purchasing power, coordinate messaging and advocacy, which we all know that's very important. If you saw anything that happened coming out of Texas with some of the EIA, that was very interesting how they mobilized so quickly and we're able to confront that. Education, partnerships, public-private partnerships as well. There's a link here if you'd like to learn more about the GBBC and the USBC working group. Here's a slide on our team at the USBC. If you recall, back in November of last year, we had an exciting announcement. That's where we announced that we were merging with the GBBC. That's been fantastic for us because we're so hyper-focused at a state perspective. It really gives us a macro global perspective that we can then bring to our stakeholders back to the folks at the state level. And then I think it also helps the GBBC, right? It gives them a local hyper-focused grassroots relationship effort. Ari Yu is our executive director. She also heads Chief of Strategy for the GBBC in the US. Lee Bratcher, another just great industry leader for us. He leads as the chair. He's based in Texas. Then Jamie and Dominic, actually Dominic's here today with us. He leads the Pennsylvania Blockchain Coalition and he's a co-vice chair. And then we have Ohio there with Andrew Birchwell, Clay in Alabama, and Sam Arms in Florida. So we've got a nice selection across the board. And again, 46 states with the District of Columbia, Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. So now I'm going to jump into what is the UCC, Uniformed Commercial Code, and it was originally created in 1952. So if you can imagine, we're talking about digital assets and we're talking about 1952. It's like a Jetsons episode almost, but not quite, right? Like they've done some enhancements to the code, but essentially the UCC is a state law, and that's why it's so important for us. It's probably what I would characterize as the most undervalued legislation that's going through our states right now from a digital assets perspective, because there's just a lot of things that need to be addressed. And it's important that we address those, and we'll get into those here in just a second. You know, again, the UCC only provides private law rules. These rules only apply to transactions between private parties, such as sales and secured transactions. UCC has no impact on some of our favorite three-lettered, four-lettered agencies, such as the SEC, CFTC, and FinCEN, which obviously are very popular here in the district. So, you know, no bearing on federal at all. It's all about the state's perspective from a commercial perspective. So what we like to say in our group of folks is the states are the laboratories of democracy. And certainly you can see that happening right now, because with the UCC amendments, the 2022 amendments, it's happening state by state. It didn't happen all at once. And states are discovering why it's important, and it's very interesting to see how that works. So the UCC 2022 amendments cover a broad range of issues, but primary aim is to provide clear and efficient rules for transactions involving digital assets such as Bitcoins and NFTs. Amendments are needed because current UCC rules are highly problematic, and we're going to talk about those right now. So what are some of the issues, pre-issues before the 2022 amendments, particularly around Article 12? So under the current UCC, Bitcoin digital assets are general intangibles. What category or asset? That was the question. Secure transactions. You know, how do you perfect someone's interest in a digital asset transaction? How to protect the buyer? And what happens when custodial wallets and providers go bankrupt? So very interesting questions, all very relevant, particularly coming out of the last year or two. So stay tuned as we continue to make progress from a state's perspective. What doesn't the Article 12 address? And there's a list here. I'm not going to go through these, but most of these even are in the UCC articles. But if you listen to the drafting commission, they felt like all these things were actually addressed well, and that they didn't need to be readdressed in Article 12. So if I were to leave you with anything as we're talking about Article 12 and these amendments and why they're so important, there's going to be about 3 different bullet points I want you to remember. One is this phrase, controllable electronic records. That's the cornerstone of the whole Article 12 amendment. So an electronic record capable of being subject to control. If you're trying to perfect, you got to make sure you have control. Control equals the record, which gives the person power to avail substantially all the benefit, exclusive power to prevent others from doing so, and exclusive power to transfer the record, and the person can identify themselves as one of the control folks. So there's 2 other things here that I think we should highlight: innocent acquire status and the preferred method of perfection. That's at the core, the cornerstone of what UCC 12 is all about. You don't want to have a financial transaction with a digital asset and not be able to perfect it, right? So that's the thing that you want to remember, and you want to make sure there's nothing clouding it or encumbering it at the end of the day. You don't want to take a digital asset if it's got somebody else's third-party right to it. And that's basically all that's saying. As far as the what we call the CER, that's the acronym for the Controllable Electronic Record for Bitcoin, electronic money for CBDCs, gives better rules to Bitcoin, preserves the decentralized nature of Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. Electronic money does not give any new or easier treatment to account-based CBDCs. Electronic money's only new rule for token-based CBDC, and no provisions for programmable money, just provisions to cover smart contracts. Note, every Bitcoin transaction is a smart contract. All right, rights of a qualifying purchaser. A purchaser requires all rights in the CER that the transferor had. A qualifying purchaser also takes free of any property claimed to the CER, and a qualifying purchaser is a purchaser who obtains control of a CER for value in good faith without notice of property claimed to the CER. the filing and financing statement of itself is not notice of a property claim to the CER. So before I go to this last part of the slide deck here, I just want to rehash the things I want you to remember about Article 12 and the cornerstones. One is this acronym CER. Remember that. That's the cornerstone, this controllable electronic record. And then it's down to the perfection of the actual transaction and who controls it and how do you control it and what qualifies control interest. If you have any questions on that, I'll be around later this afternoon all day and happy to either answer questions or get you to the person that potentially could answer it. I'm not an attorney, but I will tell you from an advocacy perspective, and we did pass this in Virginia, so we did have this conversation a number of times. It's important that we continue to get all the states very uniform. Because when we transact, we don't just transact within just one state. We transact generally through other states, right? Cross-border, state by state. So we want to make sure that's very uniform. I'm going to show you now the adoption of UCC 12. And to date, we have 15. That's including the District of Columbia. We have another of others that are in progress. That's about 14 or 15. As I mentioned for the third time, Virginia is the place for blockchain lovers, and we have passed I should say we have gotten it to the governor's desk. We're just waiting for him to sign our UCC bill. So we've got a number of other folks that are coming along, and it really is the most underrated piece of legislation, I think, right now going through our state legislatures. And we want to make sure that it's brought to bear because we have to make sure that this stuff gets perfected. If we have digital assets and we can't give clarity to the transaction from a commercial perspective, it's all for naught. So with that, I'll be around, and the GBBC disclaimer, and I'll leave it at that.